call me. Earlier, I did a video uh, remembering Frank S. Land 65 years later. When I played it back, for some reason, it was cut off too early. I do know at the time it was cut off, I was talking about the fact that Dad Land was married but had no children, yet he served as a father figure to thousands of boys. The same thing was true with my friend George Norris, a Waco Mason, who signed my petition when I joined DeMolay and later got me into Waco Lodge number 92. Brother Norris, I've looked back thinking perhaps the fact that he was didn't have children of his own inspired him to want to be a mentor to a teenage boy, and he certainly was a good mentor for me. It was in April of 1959, Dad Land was diagnosed with scleroderma. Reverend Herbert Ewing Duncan reported in his biography that he learned the meaning of courage and faith from Dad Land, and he continued his work to the very end. When his friends would urge him to spend less time at the office, he'd say, "I must finish my work." And he was treated at the Mayo Clinic. Doctors urged him not to work or exert himself in any way, but he simply repeated what he was to say so often: "My work must go on. DeMolay must go on." And he wouldn't let illness keep him away from his office. And in November 1959, he was diagnosed with pulmonary edema. And then on Sunday, November 8th, 1959, he was leaving, his friend Charlie Boyce was leaving the hospital. He stopped at the nurse's station. There he was told that Frank had been having poor nights, seemed to be much better during the day, and was not in danger. But sadly, the report was incorrect. That evening, as darkness came over the city, a call came from the hospital to the Land Department. "Mr. Land has become much weaker. He has slipped into a deep coma. The doctor indicates the end could come at any time. I suggest you come at once." It was decided among the members of the family that only Nell and Frank's sister should go to the hospital. It was thought best the mother to stay in the apartment under the care of her daughter Irene. The pioneer stoicism of these women did not allow for tears, but each felt in her heart the nearness of death, as though hearing the rustle of silent wings. And so it was on that night, November 8th, 1959, that Dad Frank S. Land passed into the great beyond. His last words were, "It is the beginning." According to his friend Charlie Boyce, our Creator has claimed for him a higher calling and task not of this earth. So many tributes came in at the time. Then it was on November 12th, 1959, 65 years ago today, that Dad Land's funeral was held, and the rain that came pouring down was seen as Mother Nature weeping for him. He was eulogized at the Country Club Christian Church by Reverend Duncan, pastor of Westminster Congregational Church and author of his biography. And Dad Land was buried in Mount Moriah Cemetery, south of Kansas City. And his wife, died on April 23rd, 1960, just a few months later. That's not unusual for a couple who've been married that long, 47 years. And on Palm Sunday, April 10th, 1960, during the sessions of the Supreme Council in Tucson, Arizona, a memorial service was held to honor Dad Land. Scripture from the 13th chapter of 1 Corinthians was read, and he was described as living on the highest plane as dedicated, consecrated man, not considered content just to follow. And he left works that would inspire descendants to say, "See this our fathers, what they did for us." On 16th of November 1961, the Frank S. Land National Rooms were dedicated. And his great work continues today. He was a strong believer in prayer. He was also a perfectionist. According to one friend, there was one part of his life I always admired. Fact is, it has always influenced me. That was his love of perfection. When a ceremony was given, it had to be just right. If you used candles, they had to be the best candles. If you used flowers, they had to be the best flowers. It seemed to give an example to the boys that if you do something, it must be done in the best manner. The clothes he wore had to be just the best clothes. He insisted that all DeMolays memorize the ritual. My passion for memorization that continues to this very day began in Waco Chapter, Order of DeMolay. I was initiated on September 26, 1967, and served as Master Counselor in the spring of 1970. I aged out in 1972, and I was inducted into the Court of Chevaliers in September of 2016. I've been invited to serve as a chapter dad. I've never had the time and doubt if I ever will. But nevertheless, it had a great influence on my upbringing. No institution except the church influenced me so much that inspired me to become a Mason and in many of my other endeavors. Dad Land believed he was carrying out what he had been ordained to do. I'm seeking to do that right now. So, on this day of November 12th, 1959, Dad Frank S. Land, that was 65 years ago today, was laid to rest in Mount Moriah Cemetery near Kansas City. We love you, Dad. May your life continue to inspire others. Have a